Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Well, it's back to rainy weather here in Seattle. I myself am really glad that the snow is finally gone. I'm not much of a snow person unless I go to visit it myself in the mountains. That's where I like my snow. And so today is totally awesome. Try something new and talk about it Tuesday. And so what I tried to this week was, and I won't be able to tell you the result of this, but recently I had my DNA tested by 23andMe, and I found out some really interesting things about my heritage that I didn't know. I have always thought I was Scotch, Irish, German, and Norwegian. And I found out I'm not any Norwegian at all, that instead of Norwegian, I'm 26% Finn. And so I'm really interested to follow that up and find out why my relatives thought they were Norwegian. But there's also a health part to the 23andMe test, and you can use your DNA now to try to find out what works or what would be best for your health, like things like nutrition and like what your genetic propensities are. And so I wanted to try some vitamins that use your DNA results to tell you whether you need or don't need certain vitamins and which ones you should take. So I went ahead and submitted my DNA to Rutin, and so I'm going to get the results back on what supplements I should take. And I'm really anxious to get that information back because I take so many different supplements that I've wondered, do I really need all of these? Am I taking ones that I don't need, or am I missing something? Because every time I read something about, something that helps you with something, I'm adding something else, and it's just getting ridiculous. So I want to find out what I really need and what I don't need. So that's what I tried this week, and I'll get back to you in the future about how the results turned out, and it'll probably take several months, but so we have a great show planned for today, and my guest is Merle Yost, and the show we're going to be talking about boundaries and healing from childhood sexual abuse, which it's a difficult but important topic that we need to bring a little bit more awareness to. Merle Yost is an author, speaker, and consultant, and he retired from his private practice in psychotherapy after 25 years. He now lectures and consults to help people make sense of their lives and often to help heal the pain that they suffer with to allow them to move forward. With over 20 or 35 years of personal and professional work, Merle has taken this period and his experience and training to use to help others. He maintains a small private practice and does short-term intensive work with select clients. He's written 6 books, and all of them are about helping people live better lives. Merle is committed to continuing his teaching and educating people about themselves. His own healing journey resulted in deep compassion for the emotional pain people experience, as well as a profound belief in the possibility for healing and reclaiming one's life. And so now I'd like to introduce Merle. Hi, Merle. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
Well, I'm glad to have you here today. To start out with, could you tell us a little more about your background and what brought you to your current path?
Yes, about 7 years ago, after having worked with clients one-on-one and weekly psychotherapy sessions for about 25 years, I realized that I had reached the end of my personal growth in terms of that. And my 2 highest values are personal growth and freedom. And it was now inhibiting my freedom as well. So I went on a journey looking for what was next and tried a lot of things. And the thing that got me most excited was doing workshops and public speaking. I took a series of workshops and it was the most fun I'd ever had in my entire life. And so I developed my first workshop, was called Shedding Light on the Sexual Abuse of Boys and the Men That Become. It had been my specialty as a therapist, or my primary specialty, for the entire time. I often say that our specialties find us, and that one found me. And I'm really glad it did. It's been an incredible journey of helping other people. And men who were sexually abused as children are really dramatically underserved in our profession, sadly enough, and in our society. And so I closed my practice, went on a 2-year sabbatical to write my 6th book, Facing the Truth of Your Life, and ended up here in Southern California. I was in Northern California for that 27 years or something like that. And here I had the opportunity to reinvent myself. I'm not just the private practice psychotherapist. I'm not an activist in the community. I'm approaching and reinventing myself in a new way in terms of public speaking and teaching. And so I do mostly consultation and teaching at this point, which is where I really wanted to be as I turned 61 this year. That it's about sharing some of that wisdom and not in a bigger picture. And by teaching therapists the things that I know, then I can help a lot more people that way, as well as sharing that with the broader public.
True. So what are you passionate about, and what areas of self-healing are you currently focused on? You just told us a little bit about that, but you could elaborate a little.
Well, I think my passion really at this point is teaching, interestingly enough. And so I can only teach those things that I know. A big part of my journey this last few years has been, the last 10 years, I've been studying energy psychology along with Buddhist psychology. And so combining that with my Gestalt foundation, I went to the Gestalt Institute in San Francisco, and I've done a lot of training in bioenergetics and psychodynamics and a whole lot of other things. And I'm an approved EMDR consultant. But bringing in the energy psychology combined with the Buddhism has been a really profound and deepening into my own healing journey, and has softened me in ways that I never even imagined were possible. And so being able to share some of that wisdom that I've gained from that and the gestalt that I've made from putting all of these things together has not only pushed my own boundaries. As this 4 years that I've been gone since I took the sabbatical, a 2-year sabbatical, and I've been back for 2, it's really been these last 4 years has been a really profound healing. It really sanding off some of those rough edges that were left that were not going to happen with me just being in private practice. I had to be out there in the world in a different way. And it's been not always a fun journey, but certainly a profoundly healing one. And the person that I left the Bay Area 4 years ago, it's not the same. I'm really quite different. And I really like the me now much more than I liked the me then.
Good. Yes, I've found it really amazing how all the different modalities intersect in different ways. And I guess learning how to use them together to come up with something better.
Well, yeah, it's knowing when to do EMDR versus lifespan integration versus some energy work or a combination thereof. And that's why I do the short-term intensives at this point. I see people usually for 5 consecutive days for 2 hours consecutively each day. And I can help them move through an amazing amount of material in that 10 hours, far more than probably they would do in a year of regular psychotherapy easily. And so that's really wonderful.
So about 5 years ago, you said already that you took a sabbatical from your private practice. What motivated you to do that?
Well, the short answer is I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. I had reached the limits of my own personal growth, most of all. But two is that I was just felt so trapped in that life, and it was, I guess there was a degree of burnout, but mostly it was, I think, increased boredom. I mean, to be brutally honest, not that people are boring, but just I really heard most of it, and just to be there week after week was no longer stimulating for me. I say to be a psychotherapist, it really helps to be a voyeur. And I'd really reached the limitations of that in terms of a private practice and the depth. And I guess the other big piece that I've come to realize is that long-term psychotherapy is about parenting. And I was really done being a parent. I really wanted to do the healing work, but I didn't want to take on the long-term transference work that requires and long-term depth psychotherapy.
Okay, interesting. Yes. You've authored 6 books. The title of your 6th book was Facing the Truth of Your Life. What do you mean by that?
It took a long time to come to this title, and I've only recently come up with a subtitle, which I'll probably put a new cover on the book with that. But the book really was intended to be a summation of what I learned, both in my personal journey and in working with psychotherapy clients for those 25 plus years. And so I really positioned it as a book that therapists could give clients who were stuck, because it will unstick them, because it really explains how we became us. All these things we downloaded from our family, the good and the bad, and how the relationships impact us and how it impacts how we are out in the world. And it really walks people through all of these different parts so that it gives them an idea. I often summarize the book that says it tells us how we became us, what was good, what was bad about that, and what you need to do about it. But we spend our whole life unpacking our relationship to our parents and our childhood. So this really gives the frame to understand why that's true and what it is you need to do about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to reach a point where you take responsibility yourself rather than, saying, well, I turned out this way because of you.
You can be a victim, or you can say, yes, this happened to me and this is what I'm doing about it.
Right. Good. Yes. So with the advent of the Me Too movement, boundaries are a big part of the conversation. What do you want to tell us about boundaries that might not be apparent to most people?
Well, I think energetic boundaries are something we take for granted but don't really understand or often acknowledge. When people are talking about energetic boundaries, they're mostly talking about personal space and touching and intruding on a physical level. But energetically speaking, I often use the example of standing in line at the grocery store and having this creepy person behind you that kind of made you uncomfortable, or you're in the presence of someone who is having either rage or an upset of some kind, and you feel like you're being infected by that energy. You're taking that on. That's an energetic boundary, and we're not taught how to manage that energy that other people are putting out so that we don't take on. And we're really not taught, and especially this is true of women who I think are socialized to merge, not to merge with other people, because when you merge with other people, you let down your boundaries and you start absorbing their stuff. And that's really, really bad. And so the workshop that I teach is about bringing all this into consciousness. It's a paradigm shift for most people to understand that we can actually manage this energy boundary between the two of us. We can have a solid boundary, and if in the event that somebody crosses that boundary for whatever reason, we can actually have tools to push them back out and clean up that intrusion. A classic example I use in the workshop is that I talk about a woman walking down the street and somebody's leering or whistling, and she gets all upset about this. So her upset is actually giving him what he wants, because he wants a reaction. So if she knows how to energetically pull back any energy from him so that there is nothing for him to get from her, he'll just disconnect because there's nothing there. It's more than just ignoring him. It's about literally having control of your energy, because he can feel that on some level. I mean, that's the whole point, is to get attention. And if you're not going to give him back that attention, there's nothing for him to feed on. And so teaching people how to do this is taking back their lives and taking back their ability to be in control of their life and their energy in a way that no one has ever taught them or told them how to do.
Yes, unless you're an empath, and then you...
Well, but this is especially good for empaths, because
yes, it is. But if you're an empath, you might have sought out that information previously because you're hyper aware.
Right, but most people don't. Even I know plenty of empaths are just exhausted all the time because they don't know how to put up a boundary. And this is like life-changing for them. So
yes, it is when you're an empath, because
yes, I get it. I'm an empath as well. I was like, oh yeah, I got it. So I had to learn this. The Gestalt was really an essential piece of this, because Gestalt was really all about boundaries. And then learning the energy psychology, I've mentored with a former Tibetan Buddhist nun for about 10 years. And so I've learned a great deal. But adding that into the Gestalt just made it all come together. Another one of those synergy of things. So I have the language of the energy psychology with the language of the Buddhism, of the Gestalt, and you put the two together and it just makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So, why are boundaries so important, and how do you create appropriate boundaries?
Well, the first step in creating is being conscious. And boundaries are important in every relationship, especially friends and family, which we tend to let down everything. In the book, I talk about that our vision of vulnerability is the baby seal about to be slaughtered, and that's what I call the defenseless vulnerability. And then we have defended, and we have undefended. And so understanding these different levels of vulnerability and not making yourself the baby seal ready to be slaughtered at every moment, which we tend to do in our personal relationships. We put it out there and we get easily wounded, and we miss what's going on because we've merged so much with these people. And it's especially important to hold these boundaries in your personal relationships so that you have better personal relationships. So you actually hear what's being said as opposed to the projection or the wound that was taken on as a consequence. I'm trying to remember the rest of the question. I got lost in my answer. But
so it was, why are boundaries important, and how do we create appropriate boundaries?
Well,
I think a lot of people have don't have good definitions of.
they don't. We don't get taught any of this, and that's why the workshop is so important, because I really take people through this, and it's an experiential workshop, so they really get the opportunity from the get-go to actually get an experience of what boundaries are. And most people are frankly not in their bodies. They're out there wandering around searching for somebody else to connect with or to see if it's safe, all this other stuff, as opposed to being inside. And I assert that if you're truly inside of yourself and tracking what's going on inside of yourself, then you know what's going on around you if you choose to tune in. But you have to be inside. The moment that you go over there, you're lost, because you're then abandoning you, and you're available to suck up all their negative energy or whatever energy they've got.
Yeah. And also, because people have such distorted ideas about boundaries, there's a lot of people who, you know, they feel like they should be able to push your boundaries. I mean, and do it constantly. So if you don't have your own definition of boundaries, you're going to their victim.
Yeah, and so it's really important to understand what they are, understand how to manage them, and how to recognize when somebody's trying to intrude or push upon your boundaries, so that you can take appropriate action. And just to call them on it. Say, you're trying to intrude upon me, or you're trying to get a response from me. You can't have that. And too many people's whole experience of being is in the reflection or the response they get back from other people. And that's why this is especially important, because we have so many people in the world who don't know who they are, that don't have a sense of themselves inside, and are so dependent upon that reflection. And then you can fall victim to these people very easily. So if you aren't aware of what's going on, you're just going to get sucked into their universe, and there's no winning.
Yes. So why are men overlooked as a group when it comes to sexual abuse, and how does this make the healing process, you know, difficult?
Thank you for asking. It's one of my favorite questions, and one of the saddest ones at the same time. Little boys, when they pop out, are told that they're men and that their job is to protect mom and their sisters. They're never allowed to be little boys, and they're not allowed to be victims from the time that they're born. They're told that they're invulnerable, and they're supposed to be powerful. They're supposed to protect. And so they download this. And so in our society, for a man to admit being a victim is tantamount to saying he's no longer a man. And so it's emasculating in our culture for men to admit they're victims. And so that's what it makes this so hard, because it's painful. It's destruction of the self in order to do that, or at least that feels like that. And so, and it's especially true when the perpetrator is a female and it's a straight male, because men are socialized that any contact with a woman is good. They're not victims. And you'll notice that female perpetrators get off with light to no sentences 90% of the time. But a comparable crime by a male is going to get sent to prison and labeled a sex offender. And so we've seen this over and over and over, because adult males can't perceive the fact that a child is a child and should be treated as a child, because they would have to admit at some point that they have been victims, or they were victimized, and they won't look at that. And I've had way too many clients come into me who've seen therapists, male and female, who told them they were made fun of, they were told they were overreacting, they were told they were making it up, and they were diminished and humiliated on really profound levels. And it made it that much harder to get treatment. And so when they finally come in with somebody who believes them and understands the process and what's going on, that's the beginning of real healing. Because the first step in healing is to have it acknowledged. And then when it's acknowledged, then you can feel it. Then you can really be held in the pain that has to be walked through. But our whole society is really set up for men not to be victims, and women are socialized to be victims. And I'm against the whole concept of calling someone a survivor. I think that leaves you defined by the abuse. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, so I think that leaves you defined and trapped in that. The point is to heal it and to move beyond it. Does that mean it never happened? Of course not. But to say that I had been sexually abused as opposed to say I am a survivor, one keeps it alive in the definition of the self as something that happened in the past. I don't say that I stubbed my toe and that I define myself by that. Not that they're comparable, obviously. But once you heal it, you should be able to move beyond that. If you keep that alive as a survivorship, then I think it keeps it alive as being a victim. And I'm really anti being a victim on just about any. I acknowledge we're all victims, but we have to move from having been a victim to having been victimized, and then move beyond that. Because if you stay a victim, you stay stuck in that victimology, and it doesn't heal. That becomes the identity.
Yes.
So that's all I'm trying to say. It's not
and heal. Yes.
Yes. So that's really the essential part of it. But men have a really hard time, and Vietnam vets who came back did better. Came back with actual wounds did better than the ones who didn't, because they could point to the wound and say, "This is why I hurt." Men are not socialized to say, "I hurt on the inside because of something that happened."
Yes, exactly.
So it's this whole setup.
I've, recently, and I know they have trouble even, having the voice to say it, but I've had men say, I haven't been able to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I haven't, I couldn't tell anybody.
They couldn't, because it was too shameful. And the shame around being a victim is greater than the shame of having been sexually abused.
Yes, that when I was saying that, I was referring to men who have come back from
Vietnam or anything.
Yeah, and have PTSD and have the physical wounds, but they're hurting.
Men are not allowed to be victims. It's just, that's really a big problem in our society.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. So what do we need to do to change this in a larger societal sense?
Well, the Catholic Church, the Boy Scouts, and various other institutions have done their best to make it a front page headline. And certainly talking about it is important. But even as much as we have made this part of the conversation, we make it about the priests who've done it. We don't make it about the boys who were victimized. Because we don't want to focus on the victim. We like focusing on perpetrators. We don't like focusing on victims. And that we have to be willing to let boys and men be victims. I mean, that's really the essential part of the conversation. It seems to be missing. And that's a societal change. I mean, just as we are bringing women up and hopefully making them more equal members of society, we also have to allow men off of their pedestal, for lack of a better word to describe it, to come down and actually be equal as well.
So I guess I still have the same follow-up question. How do we do this? Because it is really,
we're doing it.
It's hard for people in general, as you said, to hear other people's pain.
Yes.
I mean, I do it and you do it, but when I talk to people who are going through pain, one of the things they tell me about their friends and family is they don't want to hear what I have to say. They don't want to know that I am feeling this pain. They want me to be okay, and I'm not.
And most people are not. I mean, to be brutally honest, I mean, most people are wounded warriors running around surviving the best way they can. But we as a society have to be willing to hear other people's pain. How do we do that? I think we're doing it one step at a time via things like the Me Too movement, and more celebrities, male celebrities, are coming out of having been sexually abused. We do like our stars to be vulnerable. But we don't like it so much when it's in our family or the neighbor next door. It's too close, it's too personal. We can see it out there, but having it out there, just as Magic Johnson coming out with AIDS started changing the conversation about that, so will other stars coming out and talking about their experiences and their journey is part of that journey of all of us being able to bring it home and talk about it personally.
Yes, and also knowing, I think a lot of people step away when somebody, or, really don't want to hear it, when somebody tells them about some trauma or pain that they're feeling, because they think they need to be able to do something about it. And you don't have to. I mean, you're not going to be able to.
It's something I teach in the workshop, actually. As I said, the job of empathy and compassion is not to feel the other person's pain. The job is to be the profound witness of that pain, and so that they feel seen and heard. That is the healing. Your taking it on is getting you in the way of their process and their experience, and stop it. Because your job is simply to be the witness. The healing for the person often is just somebody believing them. And so one of the things I talk about, because I have the full day workshop on sexual abuse, which I couldn't sell. I couldn't get people to come because they don't want to hear about boys being victims. But I would talk about that when people say, well, how do you know what they're saying is true or not? And I said, well, the truth is that until you get concrete memory, and then even sometimes afterward, you can conflate things and put things together that don't belong. And the truth is that it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. The problem isn't finding the person to accuse and prosecuting them. The point is to heal the pain. And so your job is to believe them and heal the pain, not to find someone to punish.
Yes, as a psychotherapist, that's your job, or any kind of a therapist or consultant, or even just a friend.
Absolutely. So I think we have to start listening to each other. I think we have to start believing each other, not for the purpose always of taking action, but for the action of just being that profound witness and hearing someone, that there is so much healing in that experience. I believe I've had a lot of success as a psychotherapist, and particularly in these last couple of years doing the intensives and stuff. And I think the gift that I bring is that people feel seen. Maybe, and often they tell me for the first time in their life. I have women come into my workshop who are absolutely beautiful and say it was the first time in their life they ever were completely treated like a human being and felt seen for them, and not because they were these beautiful women. And so we need more of that across the board, and not just in our psychotherapy offices.
Yes, exactly. And you brought up something when you said, how do you know if they're telling the truth? Well, you don't.
No.
If they aren't telling you the truth, if they're telling you this story, there's still something wrong there.
Yes.
That you're hearing, and they need to be saying for some reason you don't know.
Absolutely.
So you can still be that witness.
Yes, and that is the job for all of us. I mean, we get to do it more profoundly, perhaps, in our offices, because we're a sacred space, I believe. But everyone has that job of being a witness.
So I understand you don't believe in forgiveness. So what are your thoughts on this? This is, of everything you've said, this would be the place where I would say, yeah, I don't know if I agree with you on that.
And
so
I understand.
Explain.
Certainly. This is the The original book I wrote in the original chapter I wrote in the book, actually. When I went off to write, my editor thought this was the book, because I'd written an essay on this before, and he thought, well, just expand on this essay, and he thought it was going to be the book. And then I started writing on it, discovered that it wasn't. I said, I don't really have enough to say about it to write an entire book about this. So I ended up taking a break and then a short while after, all the chapter titles came flowing into my brain, and I just writing down frantically, and I started writing the book. So the short answer to that is that forgiveness is one of those overused words like friend and love that everybody has their own meaning for, and has been so diminished as to have almost no meaning at all as a consequence. If you go to the dictionary, forgiveness is absolution. And so I don't think absolution is something that we should be offering someone. I think that our task is to acknowledge our pain, to acknowledge what happened and own it. And in terms of the other person, offering them forgiveness is letting them off the hook. And I think that is a disservice to them, because their job is to own what they did to you. And their job is to offer an apology and make amends. That's where the healing is. And I also have to differentiate here is that when I talk about forgiveness or forgiveness level events, in the book I talk about big hurts, medium hurts, and small hurts. When I talk about forgiveness, I'm talking about big hurts. This is where somebody kills your child. This is where somebody chops off your arm. This is where you're truly a victim and that something has irreparably changed your life. And so medium hurts and small hurts get healed in a different way. And I get so tired of saying, oh, my husband said something mean to me this morning, but I forgave him. So like, let's trivialize this to the point of having no meaning at all. And unfortunately, it gets used that way a lot. Or somebody who's just had their child killed goes on television and go, well, I forgive them. Bullshit. I mean, that's just nonsense, because there's a process to go through healing, and you have to go through the anger, you have to go through grieving the might have been, you have to accept the loss. And it doesn't happen in 3 minutes or even a day. And so
Yes, I understand. It's more complex than that. I guess from everything you've said, yes, I would agree with you, but maybe it is, like you said, forgiveness is a misunderstood word. Like, I say that you have to let go of that, that feeling of...
You have to detach from the victim, the perpetrator. You have to pull back all of your energy. And I assert that actually by offering forgiveness, you create a bond. Isn't that the whole point of Christianity, that when Christ forgave?
Forgiveness, you do not have to, say what they did was all right, or even...
I understand.
Or even talk to them. I mean,
it's true.
But if you let go of that feeling of being attached to whatever they did.
But I don't think forgiveness is what does that. I think that's healing. I think that's accepting that you were a victim. It's accepting that this has impacted your life in some way and will color your life for the rest of your life, and that you're taking back all of your energy, so you're no longer willing to devote any energy to that person. See, I don't think that's forgiveness. I think that's acceptance.
Okay. So, yes, I understand. There's probably, that is why we need to talk about these things.
Absolutely.
Because, okay, there's this woman that wrote this book. It's called Don't Do Things You Suck At. I disagree with that, because I think you need to do things you suck at, or you'll never get better at them. But if I read what she says about it, I actually agree with most of what she says. But when I just hear that title,
I understand.
So,
well, the title of the chapter in the book is Redefining Forgiveness. And so, but I'm really kind of redefining the word out of it, because I think it's become such an overused cliche. at this point is to have little meaning, and that we need to take back what we really need to do to heal, and not. People say I forgive as it means they think that's going to make the pain magically go away, as if it's no longer going to hurt, and it doesn't work that way. There's a whole process that has to go through.
It is a process, and I just wrote a blog that I've got posted right now. It's called Free Yourself with Forgiveness. And yeah, you can't just say I forgive and that's it. It is a process that you go through. And you might read that and say, okay, I agree with what she's saying, but that isn't what I think forgiveness is what you just said.
Right, or just, I think that we probably see the same process. I think that we see the word forgiveness differently. Is that I see it as a cliche that gets in the way of healing at this point because of what people have done to it. And I'm trying to take back the healing process and get rid of a word that I think is problematic, not the process.
Because that is the word that people balk at when you're trying to get them to go through the process. It's, I'm good with everything, but giving, no, I can't go there.
And I don't think they should. I think that they should pull back all their energy. And I believe in reconciliation. And I think that forgiveness is largely a religious concept, that once you've gone through all the other process, that you might go to that part as part of your belief system. And I don't have a particular problem with that. But it's the very end point of the process. It's certainly not the beginning one, which is the way it gets used.
Okay. Well, we are just about coming to the end of our time. So I'd like to ask you one final question. If you could leave the listeners with one thing, one takeaway from today's show, what would you want that to be?
I think I would say to the listeners, don't be afraid of other people's pain. And the way that you're not afraid of it is by not taking it on. Your job is to witness it, to acknowledge it, not to live it for them, not to heal it for them, not to take it away from them. That is their job. Your job is to not be afraid, to not shame them, to be present with them, and let the healing begin. Because just being that witness, just holding the space of that person in that pain, is the beginning of healing.
Yes. And they have to do it themselves. I mean,
they do. You can't do it for them.
Can't do it for them. So
absolutely not.
Try.
No, don't. That's that boundary again. Hold the boundary.
Yes. And that is a hard thing that people have to learn, as well as
we're socialized to merge. We're socialized to feel other people's pain, and it's shocking to people to tell them that isn't useful. And it's actually bad for us and for them. And so we have to learn to stay in our own process and not take on somebody else's. We have enough of our own stuff.
Yes, definitely. So thank you so much for being here today and talking about this subject. And I hope that, that it did help to bring some awareness to people around boundaries and healing, and especially being more aware of the pain that men experience in the whole process.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate your time.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the listeners for tuning in today, and join us again next week. We have another great show planned for next week. That show will be avoiding business disasters or business disaster avoidance. And my guest will be Dr. Gleb let's see, Sapersky. So I'm really interested to hear what he has to say, because he and I have a very basic disagreement, and he says never listen to your gut.
Oh, geez.
And so I have to find out why he thinks this, why he feels this, and why this is going to help you avoid business disasters. So be sure to tune in for that, because I'm a big believer in intuition and listening to your gut. So, but I'm sure that he has a good reason for that, and maybe it is one that we need to take into consideration. So be sure to tune in for the show next week. That'll be next Tuesday, the 28th. And carry this thought with you through your week. When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. And that was said by Brené Brown. So bye for now, and tune in next week.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.